Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey into one of life's most, well, profound and intricate transformations.
Absolutely. We're talking about how a single microscopic cell becomes a fully formed human being.
It's a process so perfectly orchestrated, so complex, that it truly feels like a biological marvel.
It really is. I mean, from that initial spark of life through all the cell division, tissues forming, organs developing, and then the way the mother and baby adapt. It's just incredible biological engineering.
And our mission for this deep dive is to give you a shortcut into understanding the wonder of pregnancy and human development. We've dug into Chapter 28 of the Human Anatomy and Physiology textbook, pulling out the key info and, honestly, some surprising facts.
Yeah, we'll cover everything from, fertilization right through to birth. And we'll even touch on how modern science helps us understand and sometimes manage these processes.
Exactly. We're aiming for a comprehensive but really engaging exploration. We want you to walk away with a clear, accurate, and maybe even surprising understanding, hitting the key processes and their real-world clinical applications.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's jump right in at the very beginning. Conception, that foundational spark of life.
Right, so when we say pregnancy, we mean that whole time period from fertilization or conception right up until birth.
And the developing offspring, that's called the conceptus.
Yes, and the whole timeline, the gestation period, is typically around 280 days. But interestingly, that's counted from the mother's last menstrual period.
Which means, and this always gets me, at the moment of actual fertilization, the mother is technically considered 2 weeks pregnant already?
It's a bit of a head start, isn't it? And that conceptus, it changes dramatically.
It really does. From fertilization through about week 8, we call it an embryo.
And then, from week 9 right through until birth, it's known as a fetus.
And after birth, of course, an infant. If you could actually see that progression, figure 28.1 in the text kind of illustrates it. Going from that tiny single cell to an early fetus. The change in size and shape is just staggering.
Absolutely mind-boggling.
But, okay, before we even get that embryo, there's that incredible journey before fertilization. The race to the egg.
Ah, yes. The timing here is absolutely critical. The egg, or oocyte, it's only viable for a really short window. Maybe 12 to 24 hours after ovulation.
Just one day, basically.
Pretty much. And sperm. They last a bit longer, but their fertilizing power is really only good for about 24 to 48 hours inside the female tract.
So, for conception to happen, intercourse has to occur in a very specific time frame. No more than 2 days before ovulation and no later than 24 hours after.
Exactly. And even then, the odds against the sperm are, well, astronomical.
Millions are ejaculated, right?
Millions, yes. But most just leak out or they're destroyed by the vagina's acidity. It's a hostile environment for them initially.
And the uterus. Don't contractions there kind of scatter them too?
They do. It helps move them, but also disperses them. So only a few thousand, maybe, ever reach the uterine tubes where the egg might be. It's an incredible journey.
And even if they make it, there's another catch, isn't there? Freshly deposited sperm can't actually fertilize straight away.
Correct. They need to undergo a process called sperm capacitation. It's a biochemical change that takes, anywhere from 2 to 10 hours.
And what does capacitation do?
2 main things. It enhances their motility, makes them swim faster, more vigorously, and crucially, it makes the membrane over their head, the acrosome, more fragile, ready to release enzymes.
Ah, so it primes them for action.
Exactly. And it's clever because it prevents those powerful enzymes from being released too early, like back in the male reproductive tract where they could cause damage.
And wasn't there something about sperm smelling their way?
Yes. It's fascinating research. It seems sperm have olfactory receptors, like the ones in your nose, that might help them navigate towards the oocyte site using chemical signals, like a tiny biological GPS.
Wow. Okay, so they've made the journey, they're capacitated, maybe they followed the scent trail. Now what? They hit the egg's defenses.
Right. The oocyte has protective layers. The outer one is the corona radiata, sort of crown of cells, and deeper in is the zona pellucida, a more glassy layer.
How do they get through the corona radiata?
They kind of weave through it, helped by an enzyme on their surface, hyaluronidase.
Okay, but the zona pellucida, that sounds tougher.
It is. And this is where the acrosomal reaction comes in. It's a real team effort, interestingly enough.
How so?
When a sperm binds to specific receptors on the zona pellucida, it triggers a calcium surge inside the sperm. This causes the acrosome to release its payload of enzymes, hyaluronidase again, but also acrosin, other proteases. These enzymes digest little holes in the zona.
So one sperm drills through.
Not usually. Here's the cool part. It generally takes hundreds of sperm releasing their enzymes simultaneously to clear a path through the zona pellucida.
So the first ones pave the way.
Exactly. Often the sperm that actually gets to fuse with the egg is one that arrives a bit later, benefiting from the path cleared by the others. Teamwork.
That's amazing. So once a path is clear, one sperm binds to the oocyte's actual membrane.
Yes. The oocyte membrane forms little microvilli that kind of pull the sperm head in, and the two membranes fuse. The sperm's contents, its nucleus, enter the oocyte. The sperm's own plasma membrane gets left behind.
Okay, so one sperm is in. Now, it's crucial that only one gets in, right? Polyspermy.
Polyspermy, yes. Having more than one sperm enter is fatal in humans. You'd end up with too much genetic material, triploidy usually, and the embryo wouldn't survive.
So the body has ways to prevent that.
Absolutely. Two main mechanisms kick in very quickly. First, there's the oocyte membrane block. As soon as that first sperm fuses, the oocyte rapidly sheds its remaining sperm-binding receptors from its surface.
It's like pulling up the welcome mat.
Sort of. Or maybe like throwing out decoys. Any other sperm arriving now bind to these shed receptors instead of the actual cell membrane entry points.
Clever. And the second mechanism?
That's the zona reaction, also called the slow block to polyspermy. Remember that calcium surge triggered by sperm entry?
Yeah.
Well, that wave of calcium spreading through the oocyte does more than just wake it up. It triggers something called the cortical reaction. Little granules just beneath the oocyte membrane spill their contents outwards.
And what do those contents do?
They contain enzymes, zonal inhibiting proteins, or ZIPs, that destroy all the remaining sperm receptors on the zona pellucida, and, importantly, cause the zona pellucida itself to harden. It becomes impenetrable.
Like slamming the door and locking it.
Precisely. Any sperm still attached, just detach. It ensures monospermy, one sperm, one egg.
Okay, door locked. Inside, what's happening with that successful sperm's nucleus?
It swells up, becoming what we call the male pronucleus.
And the egg nucleus.
That calcium surge also activates the oocyte to complete its final division, meiosis II. This produces the mature ovum nucleus, now called the female pronucleus, and a tiny second polar body, which usually just degenerates. Apparently, there are even visible zinc sparks when this happens.
Zinc sparks. Wow, so we have two pronuclei now.
Yes, one male, one female. Each replicates its DNA. Then they migrate towards each other, their membranes break down, and their chromosomes combine.
And that creates
The zygote, the very first diploid cell of the new individual, containing the full complement of chromosomes, half maternal, half paternal. That's the true moment of fertilization.
the beginning of everything.
Exactly. And now, that zygote is ready for its first division, kicking off the next phase.
Which takes us to building blocks, cleavage, and implantation. So that zygote starts dividing really fast.
Incredibly fast. This period is called cleavage. It's a series of rapid mitotic divisions, but here's the key thing. The cells divide, but the overall embryo doesn't really get bigger initially.
So lots of smaller cells instead of one big one growing. Why?
Two main reasons. First, smaller cells have a much higher surface area to volume ratio. That makes it much easier for them to take in nutrients and oxygen and get rid of waste efficiently.
Makes sense.
Second, it provides a large number of cells, the basic building blocks needed to construct the complex structures of the embryo later on. Think about building something complex. You need lots of small bricks, not one giant block.
Good analogy. How fast does this happen?
The first division, into two cells called blastomeres, happens around 36 hours after fertilization. By 72 hours, so 3 days, you've got a solid ball of 16 or more cells called the morula. It looks a bit like a mulberry.
And this is all happening while it's traveling down the uterine tube.
Exactly. It's moving towards the uterus.
Then what happens to the morula?
Around day 4 or 5, it reaches the uterus, starts taking up fluid, and forms an internal cavity. This hollow structure is now called a blastocyst. The zona pellucida, which is still around it, breaks down, and the blastocyst hatches out.
Hatches, okay. And the blastocyst has specific parts.
Yes, two crucial ones. There's a single outer layer of cells called the trophoblast cells.
Trophoblast, got it.
And then there's a small cluster of cells clinging to the inside, called the inner cell mass.
What do the trophoblast cells do?
They're absolutely vital. Think of them as the support crew and interface team. They're crucial for forming the placenta, the nourishment generator, and they also secrete factors that suppress the mother's immune system locally, preventing rejection of the embryo.
Wow, that's important. And the inner cell mass.
That's the part that will actually become the embryo proper, forming the embryonic disc. It also gives rise to 3 of the 4 extra embryonic membranes that support development.
Okay, so the blastocyst is hatched, it's in the uterus, now it needs to anchor down.
Precisely. Implantation.
Hmm.
After floating freely for about 2 or 3 days, getting nutrients from uterine secretions, the blastocyst starts implanting around day 6 or 7 after ovulation.
Is there a specific time window for this?
Yes, the uterus is only receptive for a short period, the window of implantation, which is opened up by the right levels of ovarian hormones, progesterone, and estrogen.
How does implantation actually work?
The trophoblast cells stick to the uterine lining, the endometrium. They then start secreting digestive enzymes and growth factors that allow them to invade the tissue.
Sounds quite aggressive.
It is, in a cellular sense. The endometrium responds to becoming thicker, more vascular, and showing signs of inflammation, which actually helps the process. The trophoblast then differentiates into 2 layers.
Which are?
An inner layer of distinct cells, the cytotrophoblast, and an outer multinucleated mass called the syncytiotrophoblast. This syncytiotrophoblast is the really invasive part. It digests uterine cells, breaks into maternal blood vessels, creating little pools of blood that bathe the developing structure.
So it burrows right in.
Yes, it burrows deep into the uterine wall, and eventually the endometrial cells grow over and seal it off. It's completely embedded.
That whole process sounds delicate. Does it always work?
No, surprisingly often it doesn't. It's estimated maybe 2/3 of zygotes fail to implant properly or are lost very early, often unnoticed. And even after implantation, around 30% of embryos miscarry, frequently due to genetic abnormalities. It really highlights how much has to go right.
Yeah, absolutely. So when is implantation complete?
It takes about 5 days, usually finished by day 12 after ovulation, or around day 26 of a typical menstrual cycle, right before menstruation would normally start.
Which brings us to a crucial point. How does the body stop menstruation from happening?
This is where the embryo takes charge. Those newly implanted trophoblast cells start secreting a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG.
HCG, that's the hormone pregnancy tests detect, right?
Exactly. HCG acts very much like LH, luteinizing hormone, from the mother's pituitary. Its job is to signal the corpus luteum, the structure left behind in the ovary after ovulation, to keep producing progesterone and estrogens.
And those hormones maintain the uterine lining.
Precisely. They prevent the endometrium from breaking down and shedding, thus maintaining the pregnancy. It's the embryo sending a signal, I'm here, don't start menstruation.
How long does HCG do this?
Its levels rise very sharply, peaking around the end of the 2nd month. After that, they decline significantly because the placenta itself has developed enough to take over the production of progesterone and estrogen needed to sustain the pregnancy.
So HCG bridges that early gap.
Exactly. It's the crucial early pregnancy signal.
Okay, implanted and signaled. Now we get into the really intricate building phase, crafting a human, embryonic development and organogenesis, starting with the placenta.
Right, placentation. This is the formation of that temporary but absolutely vital organ. And it's a joint venture between the embryo and the mother.
How so?
The embryonic contribution comes from the chorion, which develops from the trophoblast and some underlying mesoderm. The chorion develops these finger-like projections, the chorionic villi.
And these villi are key.
Yes, they grow and branch and become immersed in maternal blood within the intervillous spaces. The maternal part is the endometrial tissue, specifically the decidua basalis, which lies underneath the embryo. The part covering the embryo is the decidua capsularis. The villi and the decidua basalis together form the mature, disc-shaped placenta.
When is it fully working?
It's fully functional as a nutritive, respiratory, excretory, and endocrine organ by the end of the 3rd month. It's the baby's lifeline.
And you mentioned the blood supplies. They get close, but don't mix.
Extremely close, allowing for efficient exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste. But yes, normally they remain separate. There's a placental barrier. This is important for preventing immune reactions, among other things.
A very sophisticated organ. Does it make other hormones besides progesterone and estrogen?
Oh, yes. It also produces human placental lactogen, HPL, which we'll talk about more, and relaxin.
Okay. And besides the placenta, there are other membranes.
Yes, the 4 extra embryonic membranes, which form early on in the first 2 to 3 weeks, they provide support and protection.
What are they?
First, the amnion. It's a transparent sac that eventually fills with amniotic fluid, the bag of waters.
What's the fluid for?
It provides buoyancy, protecting the embryo from bumps and jolts. It maintains a constant temperature, prevents growing parts from sticking together, and allows the fetus freedom to move, which is crucial for muscle development.
Where does the fluid come from?
Initially from the mother's blood filtrate, but later the fetus contributes significantly by urinating into it.
Okay, amniotic fluid, what else?
The yolk sac. In humans, it's not a major nutrient source like in birds, but it forms part of the early gut, and very importantly, it's the source of the earliest blood cells and blood vessels,
And the other two?
the allantois. This forms the structural base for the umbilical cord, that connection to the placenta. It later becomes part of the urinary bladder. And finally, the chorion, which we already mentioned is the embryonic part of the placenta. It's the outermost membrane.
Got it. Amnion, yolk sac, allantois, chorion. So much happening so early. What's next? Gastrulation.
Yes, gastrulation usually happens in week 3. This is a fundamental process where the simple 2-layered embryonic disc transforms into a 3-layered embryo. It involves major cell migrations and rearrangements.
3 layers. How does that start?
It begins with the appearance of the primitive streak, a groove on the dorsal surface. This actually sets up the body's main longitudinal axis.
And the layers form from there.
Yes. Cells from the top layer, the epiblast, migrate inwards through the primitive streak. The first cells displace the layer below to form the endoderm, inner skin. The next cells push sideways between the top and bottom layers to form the mesoderm, middle skin. The cells remaining on the top surface become the ectoderm, outer skin.
Endoderm, mesoderm, ectoderm, and the notochord.
That forms from the mesoderm along the midline, just deep to the primitive streak. It's the very first structure providing axial support.
So why are these 3 layers, the germ layers, so important?
Because everything in the adult body develops from one of these 3 primitive tissues. It's the foundational blueprint.
Can you give examples?
Sure, ectoderm, the outer layer, gives rise to the entire nervous system, brain, spinal cord, to the epidermis of the skin.
Okay, endoderm.
The inner layer forms the epithelial linings of the digestive tract, respiratory system, urogenital system, and glands like the thyroid and pancreas.
And mesoderm.
The middle layer forms basically everything else: muscles, bones, cartilage, blood vessels, connective tissues, kidneys, gonads, you name it. It's incredibly versatile.
That's amazing. Just 3 layers give rise to all that complexity.
It truly is. And this sets the stage for organogenesis, the formation of actual organs.
And this happens fast too, right? By 8 weeks.
Astonishingly fast. By the end of week 8, the end of the embryonic period, the embryo is only about 22 millimeters, less than an inch long, but all the major adult organ systems are recognizable. Maybe not fully functional, but the basic structures are there.
How does the shape change? It starts flat.
Yes, the embryonic disc starts flat, but then it undergoes complex folding, both head to tail and side to side, transforming into a more cylindrical shape and lifting off the yolk sac.
And each germ layer starts specializing.
Exactly. The endoderm folds to form the primitive gut tube, the forerunner of the digestive tract lining, plus outpocketings that form the respiratory tract lining and glands.
And the ectoderm, nervous system.
Yes. The major event for ectoderm is neurulation, the formation of the brain and spinal cord. It's induced by signals from the underlying notochord. The ectoderm thickens into a neural plate, folds into a neural groove with neural folds on either side.
And these folds fuse.
They fuse dorsally to form the hollow neural tube, which detaches from the surface ectoderm and sinks deeper. That tube becomes the central nervous system. Some cells at the edges, neural crest cells, migrate away to form nerves, ganglia, pigment cells, and other things. And the surface ectoderm becomes the skin epidermis.
Wow. What about the mesoderm? It forms everything else.
Pretty much. The notochord provides that early scaffolding, later replaced by the vertebrae, though bits remain in the intervertebral discs. The mesoderm alongside the neural tube segments into blocks called somites.
Somites, what do they become?
They differentiate into vertebrae and ribs, the dermis of the dorsal skin, and the skeletal muscles of the neck, trunk, and limbs. Other mesoderm forms the kidneys and gonads, intermediate mesoderm, and the rest, lateral plate mesoderm, forms limb bones, cartilage, connective tissues, the heart, blood vessels, and the smooth muscle of organs, plus the serous membranes lining body cavities.
It's an incredibly orchestrated construction project.
Absolutely. And the cardiovascular system gets going incredibly early. By 3.5 weeks, a tiny heart is pumping blood.
But fetal circulation is different. You mentioned shunts. Because the lungs aren't working.
Exactly. The lungs are collapsed and filled with fluid, and the liver isn't fully functional for processing blood yet, so there are bypasses.
Like what?
Okay, oxygenated blood comes from the placenta via the umbilical vein. Much of this blood bypasses the liver through a shunt called the ductus venosus and goes straight towards the heart.
And in the heart.
2 main shunts. The foramen oval is an opening between the right and left atria. Most blood entering the right atrium flows directly through this hole into the left atrium, bypassing the pulmonary circuit, the lungs.
Okay, skips the lungs. What's the other one?
The ductus arteriosus. This is a vessel connecting the pulmonary trunk directly to the aorta. Any blood that does get pumped out by the right ventricle into the pulmonary trunk mostly gets shunted through the ductus arteriosus into the aorta, again bypassing the lungs.
So very little blood actually goes through the fetal lungs.
Very little, just enough to nourish the lung tissue itself. These shunts work because the resistance in the pulmonary circuit is very high, and resistance in the systemic circuit and placenta is lower. Blood follows the path of least resistance.
And then the deoxygenated blood goes back to the placenta.
Yes, via the two umbilical arteries, which branch off the internal iliac arteries and travel out through the umbilical cord.
Fascinating adaptations. Okay, so that covers the embryonic period up to 8 weeks. What happens next in the fetal period?
The fetal period runs from week 9 all the way to birth, around week 38. This is primarily a time of really rapid growth and the maturation and fine-tuning of all those organ systems that were laid down earlier.
So less about forming new structures, more about growth and refinement.
Exactly. The fetus grows dramatically in size and weight. You see things like fingernails forming, bones ossifying. The brain continues its complex development. Table 28.1 in the text lists key milestones.
Like feeling the baby move.
Yeah.
Quickening.
Yes, that usually happens around month 5. The organs continue to mature, the spinal cord gets myelinated, fat is deposited. The fetus goes from maybe 2 grams at the start of this period to over 3 kilograms, potentially 7 pounds or more by the end. The changes shown in figure 28.104 are remarkable.
While all this is happening in the baby, the mother's body is also going through huge changes. Let's talk about the mother's journey, adapting to pregnancy.
It's a profound transformation for her as well. Her reproductive organs obviously change. Increased blood flow causes the vagina to take on that purplish hue, Chadwick's sign. Breasts enlarge, become tender, the areolae darken.
And the uterus, it gets massive.
Incredibly so. From the size of a fist, it grows to fill most of the abdominal cavity, pushing other organs like the stomach and intestines upwards and sideways, and even causing the rib cage to flare out. Figure 28.15 shows this displacement.
That must affect her posture.
Definitely. The shift in the center of gravity often leads to lordosis, that increased lumbar curve, which contributes to the common backaches of pregnancy.
And the waddling gait, what causes that?
That's largely due to a hormone called relaxin, produced by the placenta and ovaries. It does exactly what its name suggests. It relaxes ligaments, particularly in the pelvis, including the pubic symphysis joint at the front.
To make birth easier?
Yes, it increases the flexibility of the pelvic outlet, but the downside is less stable pelvic joints, hence the waddle.
And weight gain is normal, expected.
Yes, a typical healthy gain is around 13 kilograms or 28 pounds, though it varies. Good nutrition is vital throughout, especially ensuring adequate folic acid intake, which significantly reduces the risk of neural tube defects like spina bifida in the baby.
What about metabolic changes? You mentioned HPL earlier.
Right, human placental lactogen. It helps mature the breast for lactation, promotes fetal growth, and has that glucose-sparing effect we talked about. It makes sure the fetus gets priority for glucose.
Can that cause problems for the mother?
It can sometimes lead to gestational diabetes mellitus if the mother's system can't quite compensate. Levels of parathyroid hormone and vitamin D also rise to ensure enough calcium is available for the baby's developing skeleton.
What about other systems? Digestive issues are common, right?
Very. Morning sickness, that nausea and vomiting, especially early on, is thought to be linked to high levels of HCG, estrogen, and progesterone. Heartburn is frequent because the stomach is crowded and the esophageal sphincter might relax. Constipation happens because gut motility tends to slow down.
Urinary system. Frequent urination.
Absolutely. The kidneys are working harder, producing more urine because the mother's metabolic rate and blood volume are up, plus they're dealing with fetal waste products. And of course, the growing uterus presses directly on the bladder. Stress incontinence can occur too.
Respiratory changes. Breathing feels harder.
Yes, nasal congestion or even nosebleeds can happen due to estrogen effects. Tidal volume, the amount of air per breath, increases significantly to meet higher oxygen demands, and because progesterone makes the respiratory centers more sensitive to CO2. Later on, dyspnea, or shortness of breath, is common as the uterus pushes up on the diaphragm.
And the cardiovascular system, you said dramatic changes.
The most dramatic, really. Total body water increases significantly. Blood volume expands by up to 40%. Cardiac output increases by 35–40% to circulate that extra volume efficiently. Blood pressure might change slightly.
Does the extra volume cause issues?
Well, the pressure from the uterus on pelvic veins can impair venous return from the legs, often leading to varicose veins and ankle edema or swelling.
It's also important to mention things that can harm the baby during development. Teratogens.
Critically important. Teratogens are any substances, drugs, alcohol, certain infections, radiation that can cause birth defects or even fetal death. Alcohol is a major one, leading to fetal alcohol syndrome with lifelong consequences. Nicotine constricts blood vessels, hindering oxygen delivery. The embryonic period, when organ systems are forming, is especially vulnerable.
And sometimes things go wrong with the pregnancy itself, like preeclampsia.
Yes, preeclampsia is a serious condition, usually appearing late in pregnancy. It involves issues with the placenta, leading to high blood pressure, protein in the urine, and significant edema in the mother. It requires careful monitoring and management.
Okay, so after all these months of development and adaptation, we reach the grand finale, labor and birth, or parturition.
And interestingly, it seems the fetus itself plays a key role in deciding when labor begins.
How does that work?
As the fetus matures, its adrenal glands release hormones, including cortisol. This stimulates the placenta to pump out much more estrogen. Estrogen levels reach a peak in the last weeks.
And high estrogen does what?
3 crucial things. 1, it causes the uterine muscle cells to form many more receptors for the hormone oxytocin. 2, it promotes the formation of gap junctions between those muscle cells, allowing them to contract in a coordinated way. 3, it overcomes the quieting effect that progesterone has had on the uterus throughout most of the pregnancy.
So the uterus gets more sensitive and ready to contract?
Exactly. This often leads to those weak, irregular contractions known as Braxton-Hicks contractions or false labor.
What triggers the switch to true, powerful labor?
It seems to be a combination of factors. The fetus itself starts releasing oxytocin, which causes the placenta to release prostaglandins. Both oxytocin, from the mother's pituitary as well, and prostaglandins are potent stimulators of uterine muscle contraction.
Prostaglandins have a specific role.
Yes, they seem particularly important for initiating the rhythmic, expulsive contractions, and also for softening and thinning the cervix.
And then there's that feedback loop.
A classic positive feedback loop. As contractions push the baby's head down against the cervix, the stretching of the cervix sends signals to the mother's brain to release more oxytocin. More oxytocin causes stronger contractions, which stretch the cervix more, leading to more oxytocin release, and so on. It keeps escalating until birth.
Powerful stuff. Is there anything else involved?
There's a protein called fetal fibronectin, which acts like glue, holding the fetal membranes to the uterus. Just before labor, it seems to change and act more like a lubricant, maybe helping the membranes detach.
Okay, labor has started. It happens in stages, right?
Yes, 3 distinct stages. Stage 1 is the dilation stage. You can see this in figure 28.17.
What happens here?
This starts from the onset of regular contractions and lasts until the cervix is fully dilated, which is about 10 centimeters wide. Contractions become progressively stronger, more frequent, and longer lasting.
And the cervix changes.
Yes, it softens, thins out, that's called effacement, and dilates, primarily due to the force of the baby's head pushing against it. The amniotic sac usually ruptures during this stage, the water breaking.
How long does dilation take?
It's the longest stage, typically 6 to 12 hours, sometimes longer, especially for a first baby. Also during this stage, the baby's head usually enters the true pelvis, that's engagement, and rotates to align with the pelvic outlet.
Okay, fully dilated. What's stage 2?
Stage 2 is the expulsion stage. This goes from full dilation right up until the baby is delivered.
This is the pushing stage.
Yes, contractions are very strong, very frequent, and the mother usually feels a strong urge to push with her abdominal muscles. When the largest dimension of the baby's head stretches the vulva, that's called crowning.
Sometimes an incision is made, episiotomy.
Yes, and episiotomy might be done to enlarge the vaginal opening and potentially prevent uncontrolled tearing, although its routine use is debated now.
Is head first best? Vertex presentation?
Generally, yes. The skull is the largest part, so it effectively dilates the cervix and birth canal. Plus, the baby can start breathing once the head is out, even before the rest of the body is delivered.
What if it's not head first? Breech.
Breech presentation, meaning buttocks or feet first, is more difficult and carries higher risks. It often necessitates a cesarean section or C-section, which is surgical delivery through the abdomen and uterus.
Baby's out. What's stage 3?
Stage 3 is the placental stage. This is the delivery of the afterbirth, which includes the placenta and the attached fetal membranes.
How long does that take?
Usually within 30 minutes after the baby is born. Uterine contractions continue, less intensely, but crucially, they compress uterine blood vessels to minimize bleeding and cause the placenta to shear away from the uterine wall.
Is it important that it all comes out?
Absolutely critical. Retained placental fragments can cause severe postpartum hemorrhage,
Yeah.
so it needs to be inspected carefully.
Okay, birth complete. Now the baby has to adjust to a whole new world. Life outside the womb.
It's a massive transition. Birth is a shock suddenly out of that warm, dark, fluid-filled, protected environment, and the placental lifeline is cut.
How is the baby's immediate health checked?
With the APGAR score, assessed at 1 minute and 5 minutes after birth, it scores 5 things on a scale of 0 to 2. Heart rate, respiration, color, muscle tone, and reflex irritability. A total score of 8 to 10 means the baby is adjusting well.
What triggers that very first breath? It seems so crucial.
It is. Once the umbilical cord is clamped or cut, CO2 starts to build up in the baby's blood because it's no longer being cleared by the placenta. This causes central acidosis, which strongly stimulates the respiratory control centers in the baby's brainstem, triggering that first gasp or cry.
Is it hard for them to take that first breath?
It takes a huge effort. The airways are tiny, and the lungs were collapsed and filled with fluid. It requires much more pressure than subsequent breaths.
What helps make it easier? Surfactant.
Yes, surfactant is key. It's a detergent-like substance produced by lung cells in late gestation. It reduces the surface tension of the fluid lining the alveoli, preventing them from collapsing completely between breaths and making breathing much less work.
Is that why premature babies often have breathing problems?
Exactly. If they're born before about 28-30 weeks, they often haven't produced enough surfactant yet, leading to respiratory distress syndrome.
Do newborns settle down quickly after birth?
There's usually a transitional period lasting 6 to 8 hours where their heart rate, respiration, and temperature can fluctuate quite a bit as they adjust. After that, they generally stabilize.
What about those circulatory shunts? They need to close now, right?
Yes, with the first breath and the clamping of the cord, the whole pressure dynamic changes. Those fetal bypasses, the ductus arteriosus, foramen ovale, ductus venusus, are no longer needed and start to close.
What happens to them?
The umbilical arteries and vein constrict and eventually become fibrous ligaments. The ductus venusus collapses because the ligamentum venusum in the liver.
And the heart shunts.
As the lungs inflate, resistance in the pulmonary circuit drops dramatically. Pressure in the left atrium rises above the right atrium, pushing the flap covering the foramen ovale closed. It usually fuses shut over time, becoming the fossa ovalis.
And the ductus arteriosus.
Increased oxygen levels in the blood and changing prostaglandin levels cause it to constrict tightly, usually within hours or days, and it eventually becomes the fibrous ligamentum arteriosum.
Do these always close perfectly?
Most of the time, yes. Functional closure happens quickly, often within minutes or hours. Full anatomical closure takes longer. If they fail to close properly, it can result in congenital heart defects that may require treatment.
Okay, breathing, circulation sorted, now feeding, lactation.
Nature's perfect nourishment. The breasts are actually prepared for milk production or lactation throughout pregnancy by the rising levels of estrogen, progesterone, and that human placental lactogen.
HPL. What hormone actually makes the milk?
That's prolactin, secreted by the anterior pituitary gland. Its release is stimulated during pregnancy, but high estrogen and progesterone levels actually prevent milk secretion until after birth.
So what happens right after birth? Colostrum.
Yes, for the first 2 to 3 days, the mammary glands produce colostrum. It's a yellowish fluid, different from mature milk, less fat, less lactose, but packed with protein, vitamin A, minerals, and crucially, IgA antibodies.
Antibodies for immunity.
Exactly. These antibodies provide passive immunity, protecting the baby's gut lining from pathogens and even offering some systemic protection. Colostrum also acts as a natural laxative, helping the baby clear out meconium, that first dark, tarry stool.
When does the real milk come in?
True milk production usually starts around day 3 post-birth, and its continued production depends heavily on mechanical stimulation of the nipples, i.e. the baby suckling.
Suckling triggers milk release too, the letdown.
Yes. Suckling sends nerve signals to the mother's hypothalamus, causing the posterior pituitary to release oxytocin. Oxytocin travels to the breasts and causes tiny muscle cells, myoepithelial cells, surrounding the milk glands to contract. This squeezes the milk out into the ducts, the letdown reflex.
Does it happen in both breasts?
Usually, yes, even if the baby is only feeding on one side. And interestingly, that same oxytocin release also stimulates uterine contractions, which helps the uterus shrink back down towards its pre-pregnancy size and reduces postpartum bleeding.
Are there proven benefits to breast milk?
Oh, numerous. Besides the antibodies, its fats and iron are more easily absorbed than those in formula. Its amino acid profile is ideal for infant metabolism. It contains other immune factors like complement and interferon, anti-inflammatory agents, and special sugars called oligosaccharides that encourage the growth of beneficial bacteria in the baby's gut.
Can breastfeeding affect the mother's cycles?
Yes, intensive breastfeeding, especially early on, often suppresses ovulation and menstruation, lactational amenorrhea. It can act as a form of natural birth control, but it's not foolproof, and fertility can return unexpectedly.
Okay, that covers the natural processes incredibly well, but sometimes conception needs help or needs to be prevented. Let's touch on beyond natural conception, art and contraception.
Right. For couples facing infertility, assisted reproductive technology, or ART, offers options. These techniques generally involve stimulating egg production, retrieving the eggs surgically, fertilizing them in the lab, and then transferring the resulting embryo back into the woman's body.
This is straightforward.
It can be a very demanding process physically, emotionally, and financially, but it has helped countless people achieve pregnancy.
What are the main techniques? IVF.
In vitro fertilization, IVF, is the most common. Oocytes and sperm are combined in a culture dish. In vitro means in glass. If fertilization occurs, the early embryos are grown for a few days and then transferred to the uterus. Sometimes, if sperm quality is poor, a single sperm might be injected directly into an egg, ICSI.
Are there other methods?
Yes, though less common now perhaps. Zygote intrafallopian transfer, ZFT, involves transferring fertilized eggs, zygotes, directly into the uterine tubes. Gamete intrafallopian transfer, GIFT, involves placing both eggs and sperm together into the uterine tubes, hoping fertilization will happen naturally there in vivo.
Okay, so that's health conceiving. What about preventing conception? Contraception.
A necessity for many people, and the key is usually dependability. There are several categories of methods.
Or like behavioral methods.
Yes. Things like coitus interruptus, withdrawal, which is notoriously unreliable, or rhythm methods, periodic abstinence, which involve tracking the cycle and avoiding intercourse around ovulation. This can work if done meticulously, perhaps using basal body temperature tracking or ovulation predictor kits, but requires commitment.
Then barrier methods.
Right. These physically block sperm from reaching the egg or prevent implantation. Examples include diaphragms, cervical caps, male and female condoms, and spermicides used with them. Condoms also offer protection against STIs. Effectiveness increases when methods are combined, like a diaphragm with spermicide.
Hormonal methods are very common now.
Yes, and generally very effective. The oral contraceptive pill, OCP or the pill, usually combines synthetic estrogens and progestins. They primarily work by preventing ovulation, basically tricking the body into thinking it's pregnant. They also thicken cervical mucus and make the uterine lining less receptive.
Are there different ways to get those hormones?
Yes, besides pills, there are combination hormone products like a vaginal ring or a transdermal patch delivering hormones continuously.
What about emergency contraception?
Morning after pills, MAPs or ECPs, contain higher doses of hormones. Taken soon after unprotected intercourse, they can prevent ovulation, fertilization, or implantation, depending on where the woman is in her cycle.
Are there progestin-only options?
Yes, these include implants inserted under the skin, injections given every few months, or hormonal IUDs, intrauterine devices. They primarily work by thickening cervical mucus, sometimes inhibiting ovulation, and altering the endometrium. They often have very high effectiveness rates.
And for permanent solutions?
Sterilization techniques. For women, tubal ligation involves cutting, tying, or sealing the uterine tubes to prevent eggs from reaching the uterus or sperm from reaching the eggs. For men, vasectomy involves cutting or sealing the vas deferens to prevent sperm from entering the ejaculate. Both are nearly foolproof, but should generally be considered irreversible.
And the only 100% method?
Total abstinence from intercourse.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of this incredible journey through human development.
It really is incredible when you step back and think about it.
Yeah.
From that single fertilized egg, through all that complex, perfectly timed division, differentiation, organ building, and the way the mother's body adapts, and how the infant transitions to life outside is just astounding.
The sheer complexity and the precise timing are mind-boggling. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does an unspecialized cell know when and how to become, say, a heart cell or a neuron at exactly the right point in the sequence?
Exactly. What are the master control switches? What coordinates everything so perfectly that if one step fails at a specific time, the whole process might derail? Scientists are still working to unravel many of these intricate genetic and molecular interactions. It's a frontier of biology.
It really is. This deep dive, as always, just scratches the surface of such a fascinating topic. We truly hope you found these insights compelling and maybe gained an even deeper appreciation for this journey of life.
We hope so too. It's a fundamental part of understanding human anatomy and physiology.
Thank you, as always, for being part of our last-minute lecture family.